You're listening to Worshipology with Kurtis Parks, a biblical, practical, and spiritual conversation about leading and living worship. For more information, resources, and to get the book Worshipology, go to kurtisparks.com. Now, let's lean into today's episode.
Well, hey, thanks so much for listening to the Worshipology podcast. This is a conversation all about living and leading worship, and it's for worship teams, worship leaders, and worshipers of Jesus. And super stoked today. I have followed this guy's career for quite some time. I remember listening to the album Rivers like 10 years ago and falling in love with like the songwriting, production, praises be lifted up. We did that at my church in DC. We got Josh Baldwin on the podcast. Say what's up, man.
Hey, what's up? Wow, that's you go way back. That's into the deep cuts of the JB albums.
Bro, listen, the drums on that record were so good. I tried to mimic the sound on every record I was producing back then, man.
Well,
so
thank
good.
you. You know what? Here's how you get good drums on your album. You just get the get your producer to actually be the drummer, and that's what I did.
Ooh.
He's the guy that produced it. He's a good friend of mine named Jacob Arnold, who you've probably heard.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, he plays on literally. Yep. If you listen to Christian radio or worship, you've heard Jacob play drums. You know, every day. He's on everything. But we were both living in Charlotte, and we were messing around doing demo. He was doing demos in his house trying to get good drum sounds, and we started working on some of my songs. He just played drums for me at my little church in Charlotte. And he was like, dude, you want to just record and do like an album? And I was like, sure. And he had never produced an album. He just played drums and engineered stuff. So that's how that album happened. So,
oh my gosh, that's so good. Yeah. I mean, and everybody listening, I mean, you would know, obviously, like Stand in Your Love, My King Forever. We do that all the time here at Destination Church. And then, of course, Crowns Down just came out. We're going to get into all things worship ministry, songwriting. But, dude, Josh, just give us a little bit of your story, man. Like, how did you get started in this whole thing?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm old. So back in the 80s.
There's no way you're that old.
I'm 44. I'll be 45 in July. So I'm probably a lot older than people might think I am. But which 45 is like 85 in worship leader years. So
hey, listen, I turned 42 on Sunday, man. So.
Nice. Oh, happy birthday. Well, 40s they're awesome. I used to think that like when you're in your 40s, I was going to have to like become a pastor or find something else to do because you can't lead worship anymore. You're not like young enough and relevant enough. But I think it's changing, and I think all the young worship leaders, we're all getting old now, and so it's still it's still good, and still, you know, it's still in to be a worship leader in your 50s, so that'd be awesome. But
hey, listen, Paul Balash and Bob Coughlin are giving hope to all of us, man.
No,
so
totally. I mean, I led worship last month with Martin Smith, and he's still
come on.
He's so much cooler than I am, and he's older than me. So yeah,
I love it, man.
He's amazing. But I mean, that's what I grew up in. My dad's a pastor. I grew up in a little town in North Carolina, about 45 minutes outside of Charlotte. And I mean, I literally was born on a Sunday and in church the next Sunday. That's my life story. That's a joke, but it's actually true. Like legit, one Sunday and then the next Sunday. And my dad's a pastor, but he's also was a worship leader too, and led worship in our little church. And so I just grew up in music and in church, and I think, you know, music was always like when I was introduced to music, it was through like worship and through our church. You know, that was my first memories of music. It wasn't like you know, music in the home. It was other things, and then we went to church, and then there was music. It was like that's all I knew about music, was that it was, you know, a vehicle to worship the Lord, and which isn't bad. I mean, that's a great thing. I mean, I think I'm glad that I branched out into just like being inspired by music, period. But like, I love that was like the initial introduction. My introduction into music was actually just hearing my dad worship. He wrote songs. My mom was in choir. So I mean, you know, I grew up playing drums for my dad in our little church. And that was my introduction into like the worship team, was being a drummer. And yeah,
Wow.
and I that was like, I mean, I think I started playing drums in high school when I was 12 or 13, and and that was my first memories. And then, you know, as I was in high school, my youth pastor, we didn't have a worship leader in our youth group. You know, we would throw in CDs and just worship to Petra praise back in the day.
Let's go. Yes.
You know, take the coal, cleanse my lips, here I am, that kind of stuff.
Come on, man.
And then
Let's bring some of those lyrics back, Josh.
I know,
What do you think, man?
honestly, some of those, I mean, gosh, some of those songs we would do, you know, all the Jewish songs we used to do back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
That's how I learned to play drums. It's just all those, like,
Okay.
I call them like yes, like the bone chick song, like boom chick, boom chick, boom chick.
Yep.
Yeah. They rush on the city, they run on the
Run
wall.
on the walls.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Dude, that's what I grew up in. And but I remember my youth pastor, he was like, I want to have like live worship, somebody leading worship. And he didn't really he wasn't musical, but he knew how to play a few chords on the guitar. And which the funny thing is, he wasn't near, like, my dad was a pastor and he led worship from the piano and from the guitar. My dad actually is a guitar player who kind of learned how to play piano, but he's like a really good guitar player. And my dad, but he didn't want to like push anything on me. And he just, my dad actually wasn't the one that introduced guitar to me. It was my youth pastor who barely knew 3 chords. And he was like, showed me some chords. 'Cause he was like, it's in you. I know it is. You know, your dad leads, you play drums with him every Sunday. Like, you're leading worship from the drums. And so I remember him teaching me a few chords on the guitar, and I just started to fall in love with playing the guitar and leading worship. And I started leading in my youth group. I was like 15 or 16. I can't remember, but,
Wow.
and that's where that started. Yeah. It was, so yeah.
It's so interesting to me because I have so many different walks of life on this podcast, but there is a resounding similarity where it was like, you know, my dad was a pastor, but they didn't want to push music on me.
Yeah,
You know, and I'm kind of the same way, Josh. Like, my daughter is 11. She just started playing bass. Actually, tonight in our youth group is her first time on stage.
Oh, that's amazing.
But it didn't come from me. It was kind of more from, like, you know, just music being in the house. And then literally one day she comes home from church and she's like, I think I want to play bass. And I mean, I'm not going to use the word prodigy, okay? But 2 months in, and she's going on stage tonight, like, dead on with the click.
That's awesome.
She could play like SEU worship songs, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, have we created a monster? Because she's going to be a beast up there. I'm so pumped, man. But it's just crazy.
Awesome.
Like, you're raised in church, and I think there's something innate in all of us that just wants to be a part of what they're around, man. So was that kind of how it was for you, man?
It was. And I think, and my dad even says to this day, because now, you know, my dad is like my dad and my mom, they're both, you know, they're obviously proud of me and my sister. They're proud of us both. But my dad is like, you know, he's like, you know, anytime he says his last name, if someone mentions anything about me, like, he's definitely like very much like, that's my son, you know, or anybody. I mean, he's the one that's like following and commenting on YouTube videos of me. Like, you know, if someone's asking,
I
like,
love it.
Where's Josh from? Oh, he's from Albemarle, North Carolina, and blah, blah, you know, and it's like the name of the guy responding to them is, you know, William Baldwin. Like, I wonder who that is. So he's definitely that dad, but he talks about often, like, when people ask him just about me and, like, you know, I know you do music, so did you teach Josh? And kind of tells the story just like I just told. And he's like, you know what? I feel like it was more caught than taught. Like, you know, Josh was around it, and I played drums. I mean, I think I learned so much about how to lead worship from just playing drums, and not only with my dad. As I grew up, I went to ministry school in Charlotte. I played drums there with worship leaders. I traveled for like a year and a half with Rita Springer, a worship leader, and played drums. Oh, wow. Just played drums with her. And so I learned so much just on how to lead worship by just, you know, playing drums and being in a worship set, playing another instrument. And drums are such a, you know, I think over any other instrument on the worship band, the drummer like leads so much more than you really know. I think people
right,
in the audience and the congregation don't realize like how much like, listen, the drummer can make or break this set. They can take it somewhere, or they can like quench something so fast. It's just, and so I learned how to just even lead a moment and steward a moment just from playing drums. So I think a lot of my experience and just learning how to lead worship came from just being like catching it more than just studying or being taught something. So that to go back to the beginning, I think my dad even talks about that, like how he's like, I don't know that I even taught him or told him what to do. I think he just watched me and was with me a lot and picked it up. But
wow, dude. So how did you discover, hey, I might be more than a drummer, and you jump into songwriting and actually kind of getting out from behind the kit? What was that transition like, man?
I went to this ministry. Well, I mean, I was leading worship in youth group and leading worship when I went to college for a couple years at Lee University, and then I dropped out because I never went to class, had bad grades, and I ended up going to a ministry school in Charlotte called Morning Star, and and I went there and I was leading worship, but then also still playing drums, and that's when I started getting into songwriting. Was when I was there, and and really the funny thing, I was 21, I think 21, and the funny thing is I had never really thought about writing a song. Like my dad would write songs, but I don't even know if I tried. There wasn't like this burning desire in me to be a songwriter. I just wanted to lead worship. I love leading worship. And, but I went to school there at Morning Star, and for the chapels in the school, they had chapels every morning, and they were student led worship. And you auditioned for the worship team, but to lead worship there, they had a rule where you could only lead your own song. Like, so if you didn't write a song, you couldn't just lead other people's. We didn't just pull up like a Chris Tomlin song and lead worship. And not that they were against any of that, but they were trying to like just foster like an atmosphere of creativity and just like let's really dive.
That's really cool.
And so. And they did let people. It wasn't like, no, it's not your song, but it was.
How dare you?
Yeah, it wasn't. They didn't have anything against it, but it was definitely more of like this is a safe place for you to do something like this and to try out new songs and work on creativity. And so I started writing songs just simply because I was like, I know I'm called to lead worship, and I want to lead worship here at the school, and so I guess I'm going to have to write a song. And so that's literally why I started writing songs, was to get on stage, which I wouldn't necessarily, suggest that as like don't do that. But I think what it did was it lit something in me. I started writing and it really just like opened up this other side of me that I didn't realize was there. And, and that was amazing. And I after that, I just kind of like had this burning desire to write, and knew, I knew that okay, this is another part of who I'm called to be, not just leading worship, but I'm also called to write songs, and the more that grew, the more I realized it was like I want to write songs for the church, I want to write songs for worship, like Sunday morning corporate worship, but then also I knew I had those other songs in me that I wanted to get out too. And more the singer-songwriter kind of song. So that's kind of where that transition again. And I led worship and played drums for years after that. That was, I think 2001 was my first year at that school. And then I played drums for another 7 years. I remember I graduated school, and then I became the worship pastor at one of their Morning Star churches in Moravian Falls, North Carolina, up in the mountains near Wilkesboro. And I lived up there. I was still traveling, playing drums, and also leading worship at my little church. And I started working on my first album, which is an album before the Rivers album that I've tried to get taken off of streaming services. But no,
hey, we all have those albums in our past at some point, man.
It's great.
There's just probably way more for me than anybody else. I mean, it's just like, Oh, don't listen to that, please.
No, it's great. It's just I go back and I hear all the like the bad songs, the unfinished songs, the me and my buddy, recording in random places. And anyway, I remember I was working on that album and I really started to feel this pull of like, hey, I love playing drums. It's great. I'm not that good. Like it was right in the time where drummers were just starting to get better in church. And like, there was more of an excellence on it than there ever had been. Everybody was starting to use click and tracks, and we were starting to get more dialed in church. And I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I don't think this is for me. I don't care about this enough. I'm not going to practice drums. And so, and I knew I was like, this is not even who I'm, down the road I want to be. I want to be a worship leader and a songwriter. So I remember this 2008 and I was traveling with Rita Springer at that time playing drums, and she could feel it too. She knew that I was really, I was a worship leader that was also playing drums with her and going out on trips with her. But I remember I had a talk with her. I said, hey, I think it's time for me to step down from drums. And she was like, and I was like, and it's not personal. It's not just like, I don't want to play drums with you. I was like, I think I'm just supposed to stop playing drums, period. And,
wow.
And she was great. And she was like, yeah, I feel that too. I think it's time. And so I stepped down and I haven't really played drums. I don't think I've played drums in a worship set since 2008 or 9. Yeah. But,
wow. Do you miss it at all?
I don't know.
That's wild.
Yeah. I mean, I sometimes wish I could just jump up there and play and it'd be awesome, but I haven't played in so long that anytime I do joke around and like get on a set, it's like so much work for me. Like I have to think so hard to play that I'm like, how did I used to do this for a living? Like what in the world? And now I'm like, I have to think so hard because I don't ever play. And, yeah.
So that's kind of when you started leaning more into the songwriting thing.
Yeah. Started leaning more. And that was, I mean, and I still I was writing, but not as much as I do now. And it really wasn't until I joined Bethel Music that I started like really like taking writing serious and just going after it more.
So how did you get to that place? Where was it like a particular song that was like a catalyst that kind of got out there, or was it like a relationship, or how do you go from North Carolina to Bethel Music, and then of course now I mean you write all the time with so many different streams. What's that journey been like, and how did you go from a drummer in North Carolina leading worship at Moravian Falls to now you're signed with Bethel Music? What does that journey look like?
Yeah. I mean, I think everything in my life's kind of come out of like the doors that the Lord's opened have been through relationship, and
wow.
And that's how that was. I remember back in 2006 or 7, I met when I was with Morning Star in Charlotte. Morning Star and Bethel Church out in Reading were like pretty connected. We would a lot of our people would go out there and minister in their worship school and do stuff. And then Bill Johnson and a lot of their guys would come to our church, come to Morning Star and speak in conferences. And like, so we were pretty connected as far as just like knowing each other. And that's how I met Brian and Jen Johnson, in 2007. And so I had known them for years. This was, 2007 is when I met them, and I'd lead worship with them here and there whenever they would come into Charlotte, and then I went out to visit Bethel 1 or 2 times and led worship there. But then it was 2014. I was when My Rivers album came out, and my song Praises Be Lifted Up was on there, and I sent the album out to all my friends and all like you do, you get your album, especially back in the day, and you send it out to all your buddies and all your other worship leaders and pastors all over the country. And I did that. And one of the people I sent it to was obviously Brian and Jen, and they started leading praises at church at Bethel, and it started to become like one of the like staple songs there. And
wow.
So through that, I was even more linked to them. And I remember I went out and led worship over the summer in 2014. And that was when it all happened. I mean, I had a talk with Brian. I think it was the Sunday night after I led worship that night. And he was like, hey, I was texting. He knew my pastor back in Charlotte. And he's like, hey, I was texting with your pastor today while I was leading worship. And he's like, I was just asking your pastor, like, we'd love to ask Josh if he wanted to be a part of, our Bethel Music Artist Collective. And but he was he's like, hey, we're not trying to pull him away. He could stay in Charlotte. He doesn't need to be out here. But I just wanted to like get your permission first. Didn't want you to feel like we were poaching your guy. And so, which I thought was very honorable and awesome. That was very kind.
Absolutely.
But my pastor was obviously like, yeah, go for it. And so we had the talk that night, and my wife and I prayed about it for a week or so. And then that's when we joined Bethel Music. That was 2004. Wow. So it's been almost 10 years. And
that's amazing.
And I, that was going to be the plan. I was going to be a part of Bethel Music, but then stay in Charlotte and at my church and, just kind of be the best of both worlds. I'll be at my little church here that we love, that we helped start. We had been a part of a church plant in downtown Charlotte called Queen City Church back in 2010.
Okay.
And with Robin McMillan, he was our pastor. He's John Mark McMillan's dad. John Mark goes there.
Yeah.
And so we all kind of grew up in Morning Star ministry together. And so
were the Helsers out of there as well?
The Helsers were at Morning Star with us. They weren't at our church in Charlotte, but they would come visit and play there. But we all, I went to ministry school with John Mark and Jonathan and Melissa Helser. Wow. And so we all kind of grew up in that together. And that was the same year the Helsers actually joined Bethel Music too. So it was kind of cool because it was,
wow.
Yeah, I was going out there and I had, friends of mine that I'd been with for years coming too. And I played drums on Jonathan's first ever album back in the day.
Really?
Awakening. Yeah. Before I hung it up. So
yeah.
So yeah, that was a plan. We stayed in Charlotte for another year, and then we just felt so strong, like we were supposed to be out in Reading. It just felt like, okay, we need to be all in. I really want to be a part of this church. And we were getting all, that thing that happens where you're getting signs everywhere. You're getting like dreams. My wife's getting these dreams at night about moving. I'm getting prophetic words left and right from people in my life. After a year of trying to ignore it and just be like, no, I don't want to do this. It was like, okay, this feels like the obvious next thing that the Lord has for us. And if we don't jump into this, I'm starting to feel like I'm just living in disobedience here. So
wow.
So that we moved out 2015. We moved to Reading, and
that's about the time that I met you.
Yeah,
we were out literally, from DC. I was at National Community back then. We came out to a Leaders Advance at Bethel in 2015.
Yeah,
I got a chance to worship with you one of those nights, and man, I remember the spirit in the room was so powerful, and God's presence was just so tangible, and then we got to write the next day, and I remember we wrote a song out of, I think it's still one of my favorite Psalms ever, but Psalm 63, where it says, I'll raise my hands to bless you like banners.
Yeah,
and,
banners.
That was so much fun, man. Oh my gosh.
Dude, I remember that because I hadn't been out there long, and that was kind of my...
Yeah, you had just gotten out there.
Yeah, and that was my introduction into like co-writing and all of that, because Charlotte wasn't as much like that. Charlotte was like, we all just wrote our own songs and then sang them for each other and encouraged each other then, but nobody really like co-wrote. And so I remember I just gotten into it, and I remember writing with you was one of my first times like jumping into a songwriting session with someone that you don't know.
Wow.
And I remember like thinking, like, what do you do? Like, I don't even know this guy. And there was somebody else.
I hope he's not a serial killer.
Yeah, you're like, I never know who is this. But it was great, and it was, I mean, it was just you're easy to be around and write with, and anyway, you're very outgoing, so that's great. But like, that's like one of my first memories of co-writing, especially in that, like with someone that you just haven't spent time with. So, but it went great. And well, dude, let
me pause you there. Cause I mean, co-writing, we don't talk a lot about it on this podcast, but songwriting is such a crucial part about the artist's life. And of course, more and more worship leaders and teams doing records and stuff. What are some of those key things over the last decade with co-writing and like bringing you up to speed to today? I mean, now you're, writing with different church movements, and you're all over the place, based out of Tennessee now. And we were just catching up before we hit record. But like, what are some of those things in co-writing that have been, number one, challenging, but then number two, also like inspiring and encouraging you to be even better in your craft, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think co-writing is just, once I started doing it and started just realizing that this is my favorite type of writing, it unlocked something in me that like, it's funny because it in a way, like you get to lean on other people in writing. You get to pull from maybe people that are stronger in certain areas that you're not. And so that's great. But in a sense, it's like it unlocks more creativity in me. Just the pressure that it's almost like the pressure of not feeling like you have to carry it all ends up like unlocking more in me than if I just felt like, oh, this is all on me. I got to like think of something. I love that. I love getting together and throwing out any kind of idea, whether it be good or bad, because I feel like bad ideas usually lead to good ideas. So you got to say them, you got to get everything out. And and I think that's what it did for me. Co-writing was it was like this safety net that I ended up feeling like unlocked more creativity in me and gave me permission to like explore things that I might not if I'm just by myself. And I just, because there's something about like I feel like people will rein me back in, like if it's going too far in one direction, it's like you have people around you to help, or you're that person for somebody else. But I've loved it. I think it's taught me to be prepared more, like to write, like just in season and out, like just to look for inspiration in anything in just daily life and write down ideas, whether it be And I think back when I first started, I used to think like before I go into a songwriting session, I need to have like a chorus, or I need to have a verse, or I need to have something like I need to have a lot of this song or enough of this song to give us the direction. And now I go into situations not feeling as much pressure. A lot of times I'll have something like that, but there's a lot of times I go into a situation, I'm like, man, I don't have any of that. I kind of have like maybe a theme or maybe a title that we can go after, or maybe like, I don't know, this is what I'm feeling right now, and let's write something about that, or this is what I'm going through, or what my wife's going through right now. Let's write a song towards. And so like that's that is me being prepared for a write now more than anything is being comfortable in that, and just knowing that if I have a direction, then we can get something. Like I will, something will come about this. So I love that it's taught me how to be prepared. But then also, the co-writing, it releases so much. It relieves me of so much stress in a lot of ways. And because you can lean on other people, and I like you were talking. I like writing. I mean, I write a lot with obviously like Bethel music people and Bethel Church, but I live in Franklin, Tennessee now, and I write a lot with people here. And then I go to the churches. I've written a lot in the last few years with Gateway down in Dallas. And I love, and I do that with other people. There's a lot of times worship pastors and leaders from other churches will come here to Tennessee or come out to Bethel like you did years ago and write. And I love like partnering with other churches to write for their congregation, because then you can just you talk, you get together, like what's going on in your church, or what are you guys going after, and then what kind of songs do you feel like you need as a congregation to go after. And I love that. I love partnering with churches like that, because then there's also like another weight that I feel is lifted off to me when I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go after anything here. Like I'll get direction from who I'm writing with, but then like I'm just going to throw anything at the wall here and see if it sticks. And you guys tell me if, you're not feeling that. But there's almost like a pressure that I don't feel when I'm writing for somebody else, as opposed to when I'm writing like for myself, or when I know I'm writing for an album that I'm doing. If I'm writing for something else, I'm just like, well, I'm going to throw anything at the wall here, and they'll let me know if it doesn't feel like them. But when I'm writing,
more freedom.
Yeah, when I'm writing for me, there tends to be some. I'm like, whoa, can I hear myself singing this, or can I carry this, or does this feel like me? All that. So
Interesting, man. Well, dude, I think that's a perfect segue because I wanted to lean into maybe the story behind this new song, and maybe you've heard it on the radio, maybe you've sang it in your church. I'm excited. We're actually doing this song this week, and I'm gonna text you a little something that I recorded from our choir rehearsal last night, Josh. But we're doing Crowns Down. Doing Crowns Down this Sunday at our church, and I remember the first time I heard this song, I was driving home from I think I was out of town somewhere, and just heard it on the radio, and I was like, man, there's just something on that song. And obviously chatting with you before we got to record this podcast, and you were just like, man, I love that song. I'd love to hear, what was the story? What was kind of like the precursor of that song coming together? I know you wrote it with Christine DeClario, and I think Mark Harris and Zach Rowe as well. Like, what's the story kind of behind that, and how do you take a song that starts as an idea and then like fast forward to here it is, impacting and ministering in so many different churches, man.
Yeah. Well, I love that. No, I love it that it's this song that we're talking about, because I do love the story behind this song. Not every song has an amazing story. And sometimes I hate, sometimes it's a bummer when someone asks you about a song and they're wanting to hear this amazing story. And I'm like, I don't know. We just kind of wrote that one in like 30 minutes, and I didn't think it was going to be anything. And then it ended up being awesome. But this wasn't that. This song started, I think 3 years ago now. I'm trying to think.
Wow.
2021. I think it was when I just first moved here to Tennessee, and I traveled back and forth a decent amount to Bethel out in Redding and lead worship at church there still. And I had gone back out there for a weekend, and I was leading worship. I was leading worship with this up and coming worship leader, Brandon Lake, out in Bethel, and I think
who you may have heard of.
Yeah, maybe you've heard of. Maybe back then you hadn't heard of him, but since then he's definitely doing well. But we were leading worship. We had both flown in to Redding that weekend, and we were leading worship together on a Sunday morning at church, Bethel, and I can't remember if him or whoever else, there was a girl leading with us that I can't remember. One of them had just finished a song, and we were just kind of in that moment where we were just like, the song was over. We were just kind of worshiping and just singing out our own song, and the whole church was just kind of that kind of flow moment in worship. And I just started singing. I started hearing that chorus, I will lay my crowns down at your feet. And I just started singing that over and over again. I will lay my crowns down at your feet because you are holy. And then I sang the second part. I will give my life as an offering. You are worthy. And that's literally how the chorus came. I just started that. It was one of those, and I have it on recording. I love that I did it there because they record everything, and it all sounds great. Awesome. And I have the video of me singing that, and it just became this moment in the service, and we just, it grew and it got big. And so, at the end of the service, I was back in the back lounge or the green room studio kind of room at church, and just thinking about that moment. I asked the guy, I was like, can I get the recording for that? Cause I feel like it's something I want to like add to and write. And even Brandon was like, dude, you got to write something to that. And I hung on to that. Like, and I knew that moment was special, and I knew that chorus was really special. And so, I just had it in my phone for like a year or two. I remember one of my first times I've written with him, but writing with Phil Wickham. I'm name dropping all over the place right now, but
hey, listen, man, if it's facts, it's not name dropping, bro.
That's just the way it is. But this is good because I remember my first time writing with Phil, I had that chorus, and I was like, hey, I have this, and I sent it to him, and he was like, dude, I love it. And we tried to mess with it, and just nothing came about. And I was like, oh, well, okay.
Wow.
Which, I mean, this is Phil Wickham. He's like an amazing songwriter, and it just didn't, nothing we worked on felt right with it. And we both felt that way. It was like, I don't know. I think we could do better. I think you could do better with this song, Josh. And so I took it back. I didn't do anything with him with it. And then I sat on it for another year. And I remember I go down to Gateway quite a bit. I'm friends with them, and I wrote actually "Stand in Your Love" came out of a time down at Gateway, just hanging and writing with them there, and so I have a good relationship with Mark Harris and all of them down there, and I'm actually going down there next week to lead worship at their men's conference.
Oh, super fun!
But I'd gone down there to write some songs with them for their worship album they were about to do, and we had spent a whole day writing another song, and they ended up putting on their album, and I ended up just recently put it on my new album with Crowns Down. But
wow.
I was about to leave. We spent most of the day working on that song. And I had like 45 more minutes before I had to leave and go catch a flight to come home. And I just thought, I felt something in my inside like, hey, show them Crowns Down. Because I already knew I wanted to call this song Crowns Down. And I was like, show them this. And so I was like, guys, I have a chorus I've been sitting on for like 2 years. And I just played it for them. And, it helps to play them like when you have it, like you leading it in worship. Like,
and to hear it actually in that context.
You hear it in that context, hear people singing it and it like really doing well. Like, it's working. And people are really connecting. And it's like, okay, we know this is going to work. So a lot of, I think Matt Redman says, I heard him say it, like, if it came out of worship, it's probably going to work for worship. That's,
wow.
If it came out of one of those moments.
That's really good, actually.
But yeah, so we sat down, and I remember that day we worked on verses, and we just started leaning into really I will laying our crowns down at his feet, casting our crowns, and then leaning into was it Revelation 4 where the angels are around his throne singing holy and it just it just felt right. Like it was like, okay, we wrote the verses, and I was like, yes. These are the verses that lead into this. Like, though I'm unworthy, you how's it go? Gosh, I'm trying to remember my own song. Though
I just love that you clothe the lowly in royalty.
Yes, that's what you clothe the lowly
good.
in royalty. That was the line that I think Mark sang, and I was like, yes, that leads into the chorus. So just raps like you have put the cloak of royalty over me, you call me your own, and then to go out of that into, so I will lay these crowns down at your feet, I'll give it all back to you. And
so good.
And I left. I think we had started the idea of the bridge when I had to leave. I had to go catch a flight, and we had started the idea of like we know we want to sing holy, holy, holy is the Lamb upon the throne, and so I remember I was flying home, and I got home that night, and Mark sent me a voice memo of the bridge that they wrote while I was gone. And it was the, holy, holy, holy is the Lamb upon the throne. We join with all of heavens. And he was like, do we need to put more? I feel like, does it need another? I was like, no. Like, that just needs to be what it is. We just need to sing that over and over and repeat it. And that's how it came. And it just, it was like a 2-year journey of me waiting on like the right timing for this chorus that came kind of out of nowhere. And it felt so right once it did. And I remember I went back, we were thinking about putting it on a Bethel music album, but we didn't. And Gateway was recording their album, and I knew they wanted to record it. And Mark said, well, why don't you just come down and lead it? And, so I went down and I led it on Gateway's album, along with this other song that I wrote with them, My Help. And then they named their album after it, which was amazing. Just, it was the title track, wild. Just because it was such a moment for us there too. And so, and then I recently I released my own album, Made for More, that it was a live album. And, and so I was like, I text Mark, I was like, hey, I think I might do my own version on this too. Do you care of Crown Staff? He's like, no, the more the merrier. So, that's amazing. So I have my other version too. There's so many versions out now, but I love that song. I think it's one of those songs that I'll probably be leading in worship for like the rest of my life. Like there's a lot of songs that are like seasonal for me, and a lot of songs that I've written that I used to lead a lot, and maybe I don't as much, and for no reason other than just, in and out of seasons. But that one just feels like one of those like it'll never get old to me. It'll never not be a song that I just want to just lead when I want to go, look straight to the Lord and get my eyes off myself,
Man. Well, it's got such a great message, man. And I mean, not only in our English service, but in our Spanish service, we're going to be doing the version.
Oh, that's awesome.
Rindo mis coronas.
Yes.
And
well,
it's going to be amazing.
Listen, that's the advantage of writing with Christine DeClario.
Christine,
you get
yes.
you get a Spanish version too. So, yeah.
Oh my
was
gosh.
amazing.
Yeah, she's incredible, man.
She's
We
awesome.
actually we did a project together called One, a Worship Collective, back in 2012.
Oh, wow.
And I'm definitely dating myself, but I just remember, she just brings so much to the party, man.
Oh,
and
yeah, she's great.
Having a song go out bilingually, like at the same time, is just so incredible because you're impacting not just one language, but two languages.
It is.
And
I just met
the two most spoken in the world.
Speaking of that, I just met this guy. I was back in Reading last week. We were recording the next Bethel Music live album, and these guys came from Brazil, and one of them is this worship leader from Brazil who, I didn't know him, but I looked on his Instagram. He has 2 million followers. He's this massive worship leader in Brazil, and they just flew out here to Reading to be at our recording. But he said, I just released a version of your song Crowns Down in Portuguese in Brazil.
What?
Yeah. And so I went to his site and his Instagram, and there's Crowns Down in Portuguese. It was amazing. So I was like, that's unreal.
It's going across the world, man. Well, listen, Josh, dude, just in our time remaining, man, something I love to ask worship leaders, songwriters, artists, just to kind of put a bow on such a great conversation. But man, dude, what's the Holy Spirit speaking to you right now, man? Kind of something that's just been on your radar and your prayer life for such a time as this. I'd just love to kind of peer into your prayer life, man, and just hear what the Holy Spirit's been whispering to you, man.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me personally, I know me and my wife and we're kind of in a season of, I say getting new, not new vision, but just like maybe a clarity in vision for like the next 5 years.
Wow.
And not like meaning like we're going anywhere or we're leaving anything or doing, but just like for our lives, but for our family and just for who we are as a family and what we're doing. But I feel like a lot of that has come and is going to come in just like a simple devotion to the Lord, that I feel like the Lord's just in the last few months has given me more of a passion for just that daily like time with him. And I know it's very it's very basic and practical, but like I think too, as a worship leader and as artists and creative people and musicians and all that I think our lives are somewhat chaotic, and sometimes we thrive more when it's chaotic as creatives.
Yeah, you're right.
And but I think the older I get, the more that I've found the value in a routine of just being with the Lord daily and waking up in the morning early and letting the first part of my day just be focusing on him in this simple like adoration, simple devotion to him. And it's just helped reset my whole day. And I know for me, it's probably basic to a lot of people, but I spent most of my life not doing that and just, finding time here and there when I had time, but not making time, not like setting aside. And
that's good.
There's something about like it when it hurts you a little bit more when you have to make time and set aside every day. It means a little bit more. I think that's in everything. I think, they said that with dieting and eating and exercising and all that. It's like, it needs to hurt. You need to set time to sacrifice. Yeah. And so I feel we felt that strong in our family was like, this is a season where we lean more into like that, our quiet time with the Lord, and not to get direction, not for that, for like the simple, like just, I want to be with him. I want to learn more. I want to grow in my, in how I hear his voice, and because I need some vision for this next season. And so I want to spend that daily time with him. So I know like when he's talking to me during the day, I know what he sounds like because I've heard him before. I've spent time with him that morning. I've spent time with him that day. And even in my worship, I want to know when we're in the middle of a set and we're going a certain direction and maybe the Lord's like wants to shift it over here. I want to know his voice well enough that I know that that's him saying to do that. And so it's been like this thing of like returning to my first love. And not just with him, with even in worship and in music and in songs, I've started to like fall in love even more with like the old songs that like kind of that I remember listening to, that when I first fell in love with the Lord and with worship. Like there's something about those, I mean, it is nostalgic in a lot of ways, but it brings me back to that first love and that passion that I first found, that maybe I've lost a little bit because for whatever reason. And, a lot of times when it becomes a job, it's hard to separate. Yeah. This is who I was born to be with. This is what, provides for my family. That sometimes can be tricky. And so, these whole times, these times I've had in the morning, these times I've just had worshiping here in my house, in my office by myself with these old songs have been, so vital in just bringing me back to like, oh, this is why I actually got into this, is because I feel like I was born to do this. And this is just what I want to do out of love for the Father. And so.
Wow. That's so good, man. I think that's a challenge for everybody listening, get back to your first love. If you feel like your fire's been kind of out for a little bit, man, just pray for that ignition and pray for that relighting of a fire, because, man, like obviously like God is on the move right now. Yeah. And I mean, just hearing your story and getting to know you a little bit more over these last few minutes, man, just I feel like God's got so much that's yet to come with you. And man, I just appreciate your heart, appreciate your time. And hey, for those who are listening, we're going to post some links. Of course, we're going to include the link for Josh's latest album, Made for More, and put up his Instagram there so you can follow his story and everything. But Josh, just appreciate you, man, and grateful for your time, man. You got to tell Dustin I said what's up next time you see him.
I will. Thank you so much for having. Yeah, I love Dustin Smith, my pastor here in Thompson Station, Tennessee. I hope you see.
So good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I will. I'll tell him you said hey.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us on the podcast, brother.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Worshipology with Kurtis Parks. To learn more and find resources for your team, you can visit kurtisparks.com and grab the book at worshipologybook.com.